how's your week going so far? My name is Alicia.
I'm Nicole.
Why don't we take a little time away from the hustle and bustle of adulting and let's indulge our curiosities just for a bit and talk about killers, psychos, and the unexplained.
Today we are venturing into Idaho to talk about the Doomsday Murders and Joseph Edward Duncan.
Welcome to Idaho. Potatoes. Every time I hear Idaho, I can't help thinking about potatoes. Like
Right.
composed of like 50% potato. I am a potato. Anyway, welcome to Idaho, where Joseph Edward Duncan decided to murder, abduct, and torture numerous victims across the United States. Joseph Edward Duncan III was born in Fort Bragg, North Carolina on February 25th, 1963. He was the fourth of five children of Joseph Edward Duncan Jr. and Lillian May Duncan. He had three older sisters and a younger brother. His father was in the Army, and they moved around a lot until his father retired. His mother was described as domineering. He claimed that his mother would abuse him. However, his younger brother disputed that. His parents split up and divorced in 1983, and his sisters basically moved out of the house like right around that time too, leaving Joseph to live with his mother, and his brother went to go live with the father. His father would end up remarrying, and Joseph attended Lakes High School, but he did not end up graduating. In 1978, when he was just 15 years old, he raped a 9-year-old boy at gunpoint.
Ew, what?
15.
Oh, okay, sorry, you definitely caught me off guard.
Yes, get right in it. Then the next year, he was arrested for cruising around in a stolen car. He was sentenced as a juvenile and sent to Jesse Dislin's Boys Ranch in Tacoma, where he told a therapist that he had bound and assaulted at least 6 other boys. Later, he told the therapist that he estimated that he probably raped around 13 boys by the time he was 16.
Holy, even most rapists, Alicia, haven't raped 16 people.
Yep. Before at least 13. He
Oh,
he
13, but still.
he had raped at least 13 before he was 16. That's a lot.
Oh, okay.
In 1980, Joseph had stolen several guns from a neighbor and abducted a 14-year-old boy, raping him at gunpoint. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. However, always a however,
Ugh.
he was released on parole in 1994 after serving just 14 of those years. While he was out on parole, Duncan is known to have lived like several different places in the Seattle area. And then in 1996, he was arrested for marijuana use and released on parole again a few weeks later. Now, during this time, authorities believe that Joseph had murdered Sammy Jo White and Carmen Cubias in Seattle in 1996, and also Anthony Martinez in Riverside County, California in 1997. So during the times, so the reason I mentioned both of those times that he's on parole is during the times of these parole times is when these murders had occurred. But the cases were cold. No one was tied to it until much later when they were able to tie Joseph to it. Then in 1997, Joseph violated his parole and was returned to prison. However, due to good behavior, he was released July 14th, 2000, and he moved to Fargo, North Dakota. On July 3rd, 2004, 2 boys were sexually assaulted at a playground in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. Joseph was charged with this in March of 2005, and he went to court and he had gotten a $15,000 bail set, but apparently he had made friends with a Fargo businessman who was ever so kind and bailed Joseph out.
Wait, what?
Yes. So he apparently befriended this businessman. So when he went to court and he got this $15,000 bail set, the businessman's like, I got you, bro. Here's 15 grand. But Joseph thanked him by skipping bail and running, of course. So while Joseph is on the run, he makes his way to Lake Coralline, Idaho. On May 16, 2005, authorities discovered the bodies of Brenda Groen, 40, her boyfriend Mark McKenzie, who was 37, and the oldest son, Slade Groen. He was 13. in the home. So the three of them were found by a neighbor that had went to the house because apparently the oldest son, Slade, would do like yard work and things for his neighbors for like a little bit of money. So Sloan had did some work for him and he was just coming to pay him. And he's like, this house is like really quiet, which is weird for, they got three kids normally running around like during the daytime, noises are happening, things are going on. So he called 911 just to do like a well check.
Yeah.
And they discovered all three of their bodies. They were bound and murdered by blunt force trauma to the head. However, two of his other children, Dylan 9 and Shasta 8, were missing. An Amber Alert was issued. Searchers combed the area for the kids. Like, where are they? Why would someone murder the whole family, but yet take the two younger children? 40 days later, in the early morning of July 2nd, 2005, Shasta, the 8-year-old, she was seen at a Denny's restaurant in the company of an unknown man, and they were back in Coeur d'Alene, which is where she was taken from. The waitress, the manager, and some customers at the restaurant had recognized the girl from all the media reports and the missing flyers, and they called police right away, like, hey, she's here, come get her. And then they had positioned themselves to like prevent Joseph from leaving. So when the police officers arrived at the restaurant, they arrested him. They arrested Joseph Edward Duncan III. So Shasta identified herself to the waitress at the restaurant and authorities and was taken to Kootenai Medical Center for medical treatment and to be reunited with her father. Coeur d'Alene police, meanwhile, detained Duncan on kidnapping charges, and he had some outstanding federal warrant from his previous, skipping out on his bail.
Right.
So Shasta was found without Dylan. So now authorities are asking Shasta what happened. This poor girl's story. So the night of her family's murder, Joseph set the two younger children out on the lawn so they wouldn't see their family being murdered. He didn't want them to see their mother and their stepfather, as he's murdering them or their older brother. He then got them, he then put them in a Jeep Cherokee and drove off. For 6 weeks, Joseph would repeatedly torture and sexually assault the children. And then one day he took them to a campsite area where he was abusing and assaulting Dylan, ultimately shooting him in the head, and then proceeded to burn his body. And this time Shasta did see all of that happen. There's a lot more details, but it was a lot, and children murders are hard, so we're just going to leave it there. But if you want to dig, you can dig, but there's definitely a lot more details there. On July 4, 2005, investigators found human remains at a remote makeshift campsite in Lolo National Park near St. Regis, Montana. They were positively identified as those of Dylan's. Shasta reported that Joseph nearly killed her just days after killing Dylan. She said that he gave her the choice to either be killed by strangulation or with a gun. She chose strangulation, and while Duncan proceeded to wrap a rope around her neck and he was pulling it tightly, she was starting to suffocate. However, she was able to get just enough air to breathe out to him, and she called him his nickname. Apparently his nickname is Jet. So basically she said, Jet, don't do this. And for some reason that triggered something in him. He stopped. I guess it was like a moving moment for him. After that, the two of them drove to that Denny's that Shasta would be rescued from, ending this awful time for her, thank goodness. So after Joseph's arrest, this led the FBI launching a nationwide review of different unsolved missing children cases. He's suspected in several crimes that occurred between 1994 and 1997 during those parole periods. And again, in between 2000 and 2005, again, during those parole periods. Although he was cleared as a suspect in some of the cases, authorities in California and Washington did have enough evidence to believe that Duncan had committed some of these unsolved murders in their jurisdictions.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to back it up just a little bit. April 4th, 1997, 10-year-old Anthony Michael Martinez was playing with friends in the front yard of his home in Beaumont, California, when an unknown man approached the group asking to help him find his cat. The boys refused, and the man ended up grabbing little Michael at knife point and threw him into his vehicle. After a 2-week search, Michael's body was found decomposed in Indio, California, on April 19th. So investigators had noted that he had been sexually assaulted and bound with duct tape. Although a composite sketch of the suspect was made available, and there was a partial fingerprint taken from the duct tape, the case eventually went cold. Then in July of 2005, bloggers are, people on the internet, they're looking at all the pictures, they're reading back, they're, deciphering everything in their heads, so the bloggers started noticing these similarities between Joseph and the composite sketch and also the vehicles in that Michael Martinez case. Authorities were able to match the fingerprints taken from the body to Joseph. And on August 3rd, the Riverside County Sheriff's Department officially announced Joseph's connection. He did confess to the murder and described his reason as, quote, revenge against society again for sending him back to jail for a probation violation, end quote. After her rescue, Shasta told investigators that Joseph had told her about other crimes he had committed, including that one. And then in 1996, the Sammy Jo White, who was 11, and her half-sister Carmen Cubias, who was 9, when they both vanished on July 6, 1996, after leaving the Crest Motel in Seattle. Their skeletal remains were found February 10th, 1998, in Bothell, Washington. So he traveled a little bit with them, I guess.
Right.
I don't know if Seattle is to Bothell, but 2 different cities. Joseph did confess to beating the 2 young girls to death. There was a very lengthy and detailed court trial, so I'm just going to summarize it because, again, there's a lot of details here. So on January 8, 2007, Duncan was indicted by a federal grand jury in Coeur d'Alene on 10 counts of kidnapping resulting in death, aggravated sexual abuse of a minor, and sexual exploitation of a child resulting in death. And there was several other crimes related to illegal firearm possessions and vehicle thefts. He was arraigned. The following day at a federal court in Boise, there was a judge that ordered Duncan to stand trial the following March. Duncan's defense attorneys immediately requested a postponement, which was granted. And then the week of the trial was originally scheduled to begin. There was a new date that was now set for January 2008. Then on December 2007, Duncan went ahead and he pleaded guilty to all 10 charges against him. As a condition of this agreement, Shasta Groen would not have to testify in the penalty phase of the trial. So it's not certain if he just decided to come clean because he, again, has some kind of connection with Shasta now, and he didn't want her to have to get up there. Not sure. But the jury selection for the penalty phase for Duncan's federal trial begins in April of 2008. So during the jury selection, Duncan dismissed his attorneys and chose to represent himself. And then August 27, 2008, after 3 hours of deliberation, the jury recommended the death penalty, and the judge imposed 3 death sentences for kidnapping resulting in death, sexual exploitation of a child resulting in death, and the use of a firearm in violent crime resulting in death. So all 3 of those got a death sentence.
Good.
And they were all related to the oldest brother, or the youngest brother, Dylan Groen. Then on November 3rd, 2008, Duncan was sentenced to an additional 3 consecutive terms of life without parole in federal prison for kidnapping Shasta Groen and for sexually abusing Shasta and Dylan. He was extradited to California on January 24, 2005, 5 months later being sentenced to death by the federal court. On March 15, 2011, Duncan pleaded guilty to Martinez's murder and was sentenced to 2 life terms without possibility of parole on April 5th, 2011. Ultimately, Joseph received multiple life sentences and death sentences. One part of the trial that just really shook me is there was actual 33-minute video of what had happened when they were in that makeshift campsite with nude Joseph molesting and torturing the little one, Dylan.
Wait. He took video of it?
33-minute video of that.
Ugh.
So these poor jurors that had to go through this. So the jurors did, they did offer them counseling to help them cope with all the horrific evidence that they had to see during that trial. But I would not want to be in their seat. That would be just terrible to have to endure all of that.
I don't, I
Yeah.
don't, girl,
Uh-huh.
I would have
Yeah.
threw up, passed out, started crying. Like, I don't even know what I would have done.
No, no, no. I like I was upset just reading some of these details, let alone if I had to sit and endure all that. There's no possible. I I could not. Um, but what did come like something, so here's a positive, here's a positive. In 2016, Shasta Groen, she's 19 years old now. She started a petition called Slade and Dillon's Law in honor of her two brothers who had been murdered. So the petition description, she stated that convicted sex offenders should not be let out of jail. This would effectively mean that there's currently this 3 strike rule for violent sex offenders to be reduced down to 1 strike. So by the time the petition closed, it had 51,820 supporters. I don't know if like came of that after that, but at least she's trying to make some changes. She's trying to move forward and
I mean, if what state? Idaho, right? So, like, we would have to look it up and feel free to research and comment in the comments. But
yeah, because I'm
yeah.
curious came into law or, if that petition actually went through, that would be good to know. Duncan was imprisoned on federal death row at the United States Penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana. So this man actually had an entire personal website called The Fifth Nail. So, according to lore, in addition to the 4 nails used to pierce the body of Jesus Christ in his crucifixion, there was actually a fifth nail that was taken away and hidden by the Romans. He adopted this name for his own website and his blog. On the website, he depicts his day to day life as a convicted sex offender. He denies being a pedophile and claims to have been sexually abused as a child. So, this man sits there and writes out his day to day, everything that he's doing, and blogs it.
This is like a lot of people who end up doing awful things like that. A lot of times have been abused as children, but that doesn't give you the right
No,
to turn around and do it to somebody else.
no, absolutely not. But through this blog spot, he gave updates on his life from inside prison and described what life is like for him on federal death row. In October 2020, Duncan underwent brain surgery after he was diagnosed with brain cancer. He declined any treatment and rejected chemotherapy and radiation therapies. He died on March 28, 2021, at the age of 58. His body was cremated, putting an end to this awful story. That was a lot.
That was like a not even just that, like horrific, disgusting, human that kept getting chances.
Yeah, I hope that Shasta's petition went through. I mean, it just says that by the time it had closed. I don't know if that means like they just stopped petitioning or if anything ever came of it, but
If I remember correctly, you have so long to get the signatures, and
yeah,
you usually have to have a set amount. And I don't know.
maybe 51,820 wasn't enough.
Yeah, I don't know. She definitely should try again though if she hasn't.
Yeah.
Girl, don't give up.
Mm-mm.
Doomsday murders committed by American couple Lori Vallow Daybell and Chad Daybell. Chad Daybell was born August 11th, 1968 in Utah to a Mormon family. He got his BA in journalism and in March of 1990 married Tamara Douglas and had 5 children. Chad worked as a copy editor, grave digger, and crematory sexton. All that means is that he fixed stuff around the crematory.
He spent a lot of time around the dead folk.
Yeah, that.
Mm-hmm.
Chad's first religious novel was published in 1999. In 2001, he became a full-time writer and published another book. Then in 2004, Chad and Tamra found Spring Creek Book Company, where Chad self-published his beliefs on end times and other religiously themed books aimed at the Mormon audience. At the end of the 2000s, Chad had financial problems and business the business they created only provided them $2,000 annually.
Oh, dang.
So Chad and Tamara had to work part-time jobs to supplement income. Chad was able to revive the company by finding a group worried about the second coming of Christ. Chad started speaking in radical Mormon circles, and Chad claimed events in his book came to him through the veil, and he could receive them because he was torn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a lot about the Mormon religion, but if you do, that might make more sense to you, that part of it. But basically, he was saying he was getting his visions from God. All events are real and will happen. So everything he's wrote in his book, girl, it's gonna happen. Jason G. William, Tammy's brother-in-law, said Chad became hyper-focused on end times and preparation sometime in 2006, 2007. In 2010, Chad claimed to have visions on how the world would end. 2013, he prophesied earthquakes, war, and the destruction of America. In 2015, Chad heard a voice telling him to relocate to Idaho since an earthquake would destroy Utah that year. Now, Lori Vallow Daybell was born on June 26, 1973 in California. She grew up Mormon. Her parents were tax protesters who adhered to sovereign citizen ideology and were in conflict with the IRS for 2 decades. So, this is her start in life. In 92, at age 19, Lori married her high school boyfriend, but it ended in divorce shortly after. In October of 95, Lori married again and she had a son, then divorced in 98. She worked for a while as a hairdresser, and in 2004, she was a contestant in Miss Texas and she was actually on the show Wheel of Fortune. In 2001, Lori married Joseph Anthony Ryan Jr., who adopted her son and had a daughter in 2002. They divorced in 2005. During a nasty divorce, she accused him of sexually assaulting both children. Ryan eventually lost custody, and in 2020, the son claimed sexual abuse by Ryan. But this is after Ryan has died. He died in 2018 of some cardiovascular thing. After Lori's arrest, they did re examine the body, but nothing seemed to be in foul play, which will come into effect later. In February of 2006, Lori married Leland Charles Anthony Vallow. That's the fourth marriage if you lost count.
I didn't.
In 2013, the couple adopted Leland's grandnephew because the parents were unable to care for the child. They were very big drug users. And in around 2015, Lori becomes interested in Chad's books. This is how they're getting connected. Lori became obsessed with radical religious beliefs near death and started listening to podcasts about excommunicated Mormons. October in 2018, Lori attended a Preparing of People event and met Chad for the first time. Lori flirted with Chad, and Chad told Lori they had been married multiple times in previous lives.
I mean, but she multiple times in this life, though.
Right. After the conference, they started communicating privately, and eventually they became lovers. Chad and Lori told their followers they belonged to the Church of the Firstborn, of which Chad was the leader. The couple believed in reincarnation, which is not an LDS belief, and Chad claimed to have lived 31 previous lives on different planets. And Lori lived 21 lives, 5 of which coincided with his on Earth. Lori said her and Chad were sealed because of their previous marriages, but couldn't divorce because the spouses knew too much. So, we're sealed, as in we're together forever because we've been married in a previous life, right? But we can't dare divorce our spouses because they know too much, because they're too deep into the religion with us. This is what they're telling their followers.
Wow.
Chad assigned people as light or dark, which was him assigning them as an affiliation with Jesus or Satan. Dark people were possessed, so they would do casting out ceremonies, sometimes claiming they became zombies, and the only way to change that is to kill the person.
Oh, snap.
7 women in the group were the 7 gatherers, and they would do castings together over Zoom. Chad and Lori also used a vibration scale, and someone with enough vibrations possessed special powers. They believed in teleportation, which Chad used to communicate spiritually with Lori, receive revelations, and travel to other realms. Chad predicted the world would end July 22nd, 2020. We're still here.
Yeah.
Okay. Lori believed she was the exalted goddess. They were destined to lead the 144,000 people who would remain after the world ended. So the world's ended. I don't know in what way because it doesn't say. I mean, he said earthquakes and wars and all that. So I guess he did say that. So everyone's died but 144,000 people, and they're going to be their leaders after. February 2019, Lori told Charles she no longer cared about him or JJ. Now, JJ is the child. Lori then vanished for 58 days. She was like, peace. Charles filed for divorce, citing threats to his life, the theft of his truck, and $35,000 from their joint account. Lori told Charles he was possessed by a dark spirit called Ned Schneider. She all I know.
Okay. All
She,
right.
she she also claimed she was a god assigned to carry out the work of 144,000 at Christ's second coming, which was going to be in July of 2020, and she would murder him if he got in her way. Charles was so worried about Lori, he changed his beneficiary to his $1 million policy to his sister. Lori told her followers Charles was a zombie, and they prayed for his demise. 11 days before his death, Charles emailed Tammy about their spouses cheating. July 11th, 2019, Charles went to pick up JJ at Lori's. An altercation happened, and Cox, Lori's brother, shot and killed him. The cops weren't called for 45 minutes. And then Lori took JJ to school and got breakfast and went to Walgreens. But no charges were ever filed.
Oh, wow.
Lori texted Charles's son and told them of his dad's passing, but then gave no information to them for 3 days. Hey, your dad died.
Period. Click.
Yeah, radio silence for 3 days. I
Oh
don't care
my.
where I'm living. I would fly, run, jump, leap, take a plane, train, whatever. You're gonna tell me what happened to my dad. The sons had to call around to find his body. They just had to keep calling morgues till they found out where he was. Plan the service themselves, and she never attended.
Of course she didn't.
Police found a series of texts from Chad to Lori about their sexual relations. At the end of August, Lori relocated to Ruxburg, Idaho. She sold her son's service dog. Lori would leave JJ outside for long periods of time alone, and when she was confronted, she told the neighbors it was her sister's drug baby.
Hmm.
She didn't even claim him. all because he was autistic and she didn't want to deal. The daughter, Tylee, was last seen September 8th, 2019 at Yellowstone National Park. Tylee was never enrolled in school, so when they moved, her mother never enrolled her. And JJ was last reported in attendance at school September 20th. On the 22nd, at 10:30 p.m., Cox took JJ to his room and was never seen again.
So Cox didn't go to jail for killing.
Well, we gotta listen to the whole story because there's a whole fuck ton more.
Oh, because I mean he got no. Okay, I'm listening.
No charges were filed on that gentleman he shot because it was self-defense, they claimed. The
Hmm.
whole thing, yeah. Lori collected the social security for the kids for months and months and months after they disappeared. 2 Venmo payments were sent to Colby Ryan, who was Tylee's older half brother. Texts were answered. So if Colby Ryan texted his sister Tylee, they would answer on her phone. But if he tried to call on the telephone, it was never picked up. So he knew something was going on. Lori and Chad told followers the kids were possessed and had become zombies. Chad told followers JJ would die soon and come back as Colby's son. He's just going to be reincarnated. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
The FBI uncovered texts about Lori and Chad taking care of the Z's, which were zombies, since Tylee and JJ were possessed. So they text messaged about this. October 2nd, 2019, Brandon Borwicks, the estranged husband of Lori's niece, Melanie, and Melanie is in this cult with them, okay, was shot from a Jeep looking like Tylee's Jeep. The license plate came back as Charles Vallo's Jeep. Now, if you're keeping track, that's the dead husband.
Yeah, the dead husband.
Melanie became very involved in the religious activities in 2018. In 2019, filed for divorce, which wasn't finalized yet when Brandon was shot at. Brandon then hired a private investigator. He believed his attempted murder, the children's disappearances, and Charlie's death were all connected. So, like, he's like, fuck this, the police are not doing their job. He also believed his was for his insurance policy.
I mean, probably they need money to, do they crazy.
Correct. Cox's turned up dead, and police discovered his phone pinged near the shooting at the same time. Now, Cox is her brother, and now he's dead too. In February 2019, Chad told neighbors he had a vision Tammy would pass away before her 50th birthday. Now, that's his wife he's talking about. October 9th, 2019, Tammy reported being shot at in her driveway by a masked man. She thought it was a paintball gun. The gun, however, was real, but unloaded, police think, or misfired. Therefore, deemed as a prank. The police are just not.
A prank, it's a precursor, whatever, pre-game. They pre-gamed.
Correct. 10 days later, Tammy was found dead in her home, apparently from natural causes.
Mm-hmm.
Chad said she went to bed with a bad cough and never woke up. He claimed she had low blood pressure, seizures, negative reactions to homeopathic medications, even though this wasn't in her medical chart. None of it. How are you going to say your wife has seizures, sir, when she does not? Tammy's funeral was 3 days later in Utah. Chad did not seem devastated and acted in a businesslike manner. During the service, Chad said Tammy suffered from depression and said she was not easy to live with and lazy. I don't care what. You don't say that at someone's funeral, sir.
Well, then obviously they don't care about divorcing everybody, so why didn't they just divorce her then?
I, I have no clue. Chad received 400. Well, this is probably why. Chad received $430,000 in death benefits, and no autopsies were ever done because Chad refused.
That's why.
Later, the body was exhumed and autopsies found she had asphyxiated.
He
Yeah,
suffocated.
yep. Chad and Lori had told their followers Tammy was a zombie. Cox's phone pinged at the Daybell's house 4 hours before Tammy was shot. And again, 10 days later, police found an AR-15 at Cox's home. Chad introduced Lori to his children the day after Tammy's funeral. So, the information's a little bit out of order, so let me make this clear. When we said her brother was dead, he wasn't dead before Tammy. He died after Tammy, but shortly after. So Chad and Lori married in Hawaii November 5th, 2019. And yeah, you heard me right. Hey children, I know your mom's funeral was yesterday, but this is Lori.
We're getting married today.
We're
Tomorrow.
getting married tomorrow in Hawaii. It was only 2 weeks after Tammy's death that they got married. November 26th, police showed up to do a welfare check, and Chad acted like he barely knew Lori. And Cox said JJ was with the grandmother, the dead
Yes, it
husband's
appeared.
mother.
Mm-hmm.
When police reached Lori, she claimed JJ was at her friend's. However, when they called the friend, said JJ hadn't been with her for months. Now, the friend lived in another state. It was in Arizona, so that's why there was a phone call. That night, they packed up the house and moved. Lori and Chad returned to Hawaii to live. In their application, Chad said they had no children. Police efforts to find JJ made police realize Tylee was also missing. Police tied Arizona and Idaho investigations together and decided to exhume Tammy's body. And that's also when they started to intensify their investigation. So now they haven't done crap right for years, and all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, we think everything might be tied together. Like, these people might actually be crazy. So, December 20th, the police announced the children were officially missing. The next day, Chad and Lori became persons of interest, and finally, the family and friends were telling of their cult like behaviors and beliefs. Colby Ryan, JJ's grandparents, and Chad's brother issued messages asking them to return the children. Like, they're all over social media, the news, calling, texting, emailing, all those things to try to get them to return the kids. January 7th, 2020, the grandparents offered a $20,000 reward for the children's return or information leading to them. On January 25th, 2020, Lori was served with court papers requiring the children to be physically produced within 5 days. The next day, police searched the rental car and home, finding Tylee's credit card and JJ's iPad were at the house, but no children. February 2020, a strange locker was discovered with the children's belongings. So, like, it's full of toys, clothes, probably beds, like everything that was the kids. November 4th, 2019, Chad gave Cox a patriarchal blessing. Cox died December 12th, 2019, due to blood clots and high blood pressure. I don't know if that was
Mm-hmm.
so. February 20th, 2020, Lori was arrested, and Lori faced 2 felony counts of desertion as well as 3 misdemeanors. Chad returned to Idaho. He couldn't be without his love.
Of course not.
June 9th, police found human remains in unmarked graves in Chad's backyard. As police were unearthing bodies, Chad tries to flee, being arrested. The bodies were Tylee and JJ. Tylee's body had been badly burned, her hands cut off, and her bones fractured in several areas. The coroner said it looked like they tried to dismember her, but didn't know what they were doing. JJ was wrapped in plastic and buried with great care. Well, they immediately are thinking 2 different people have done this. They don't think the same person murdered the children, or at least got rid of the bodies, at the very least. They think it's two different people because one was nicely taken care of and the other was not. Tylee's DNA were found on a pickaxe and shovel at Chad's. And JJ's body had Cox's fingerprints and Lori's hair on the duct tape. Lori was charged with concealment and obstruction. On May 25th, Chad and Lori were indicted on charges of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder for the deaths of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. Grand theft by deception. Lori was also charged with grand theft for those Social Security benefits, and Chad for insurance fraud. Then on June 2021, Lori was indicted in Arizona of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Charles. In 2022, Lori was indicted for premeditated murder related to Brandon. And on May 27, 2021, Lori was found incompetent to stand her trial, and a stay order was put in place. Now, mind you, at this point, they're trying them together. And so they're just waiting now to see if Lori can even stand trial. So, as they're waiting, they both decide to plead not guilty, and Chad requests a separate trial from Lori, and it was granted. She's now been deemed to be able to come back, but she wants a speedy trial where Chad wants to take time to prepare for his. So this is why the judge has let them separate their trials. On April 3rd, 2023, Lori's trial began. Lori had no witnesses and did not testify for herself. On May 12th, she was found guilty on all charges. Now, this is in Idaho. In July 31st, she received 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Chad, on November 9th, 2023, was denied the death penalty. Denied getting rid of it. He was trying to. You can apparently plead your case before your trial even starts, like, I don't want the death penalty thing, but they were like, no, sir. April 10th, 2024, the trial began. 2 of Chad's children testified on his defense, and Chad did not take the stand for himself. On May 30th, 2024, Chad was found guilty on all counts. On June 1st, 2024, Chad was sentenced to death. Insurance charges got him 15 years plus restitution of $130,000 plus $300,000. So he's been
So he,
sentenced to death. He's been sentenced to 15 years. He's been sentenced to pay back $430,000.
yeah, I can pay $430,000 sitting in jail, but the one thing he didn't want was death. He got it.
Right. I think like they can seize all of his property and sell it, and then if it's less than $430, he doesn't get anything back to give to his kids.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So, Arizona tried Lori separately for both cases. So, they didn't even do her cases together. And she chose to represent herself, of course. And on April 22nd, 2025, Lori was found guilty for Charles. And on May 29th, her other trial began. And on June 12th, she was found guilty for Brandon. July 25th, sentencing for both cases, Lori was given 2 consecutive life sentences, no parole possible for 25 years, and fined $267,000 on each case. So that's over $500,000 she has to pay back. And lastly, a no contact order for a lifetime on Brandon, so she can never again contact that person.
At least there's that.
And that is one wild ride of how 2 people wanted to cheat on their spouses and get rid of everyone else.
Everything I write in my book comes true. My goodness.
Right. Right.
Didn't anybody did any of the investigators actually read his book to be like, what?
I don't, until they started like really investigating him, I don't think so. I think they thought he was a run-of-the-mill crazy, not like out here murdering and
Religion name, whatever. Oh, it's so, yeah. Well, let us finish this off with a little of the unexplained. So, Idaho's cryptid creature is the Bear Lake Monster. The legend of the Bear Lake Monster goes back to the Shoshone and Bannock tribes. It's described as a serpent like creature or an alligator like beast measuring 40 to 90 feet in length and having leathery skin. It lurks in the depths of the lake, and it's said to snatch up maidens that came close to the shore, dragging them down into the watery abyss, never to be seen again. And then years later, other eyewitnesses say it swims just so fast, it cuts right through the water at tremendous speeds. Others say the beast has like glowing eyes and can even come onto land for periods of time to attack campers. Have you heard or seen the Bear Lake Monster? Let us know. We are interested.
we would like to thank you for joining us in our discoveries of Idaho this week. Please join us next week while we travel to Illinois. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss our adventures next week into killers, psychos, and the unexplained.
Bye bye.
Bye!